Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Empyrion Galactic Survival Episode 9. I'm Enigmatus, and today we're looking at our small vessel that we're building. It's an in-progress project that we took on in the last episode. But a funny thing happened, and I'm extremely glad that I caught it when I did. The blocks that you placed to start building a new ship, I didn't realize they were directional, and we placed ours in the wrong direction, so we had it basically, if the ship was where this one is now, we placed our blocks so that it was facing our base, but our cockpit and the whole design of the ship was as if it was facing in this direction, which meant we had to make some changes. Now, I looked online. Google wasn't able to provide me with anything by way of instructions on how to move or relocate or reorient the core block. The only thing that I could come up with to do was dismantle the entire ship that we had made and start over. It took a long time. I have to say the repair and remove tool is not really good at removing things. It's the only way to remove them and keep the materials, but it is damn slow. We used upwards of 20 energy packs for that tool alone, and then we started all over. We started from scratch. And this is what we've come up with, which is basically very similar in terms of the hull that we started making. It's a little bit more compact. It's a little bit smaller. Not necessarily because it had to be that way, but because that's how it came together. Just came to be a little bit smaller. You can see just like last time, we've got the automatic doors here, and there's one on the other side as well. We've got thrusters here now on the bottom that provide lift, and this thing actually ascends. Presently, based on its current weight and all that other stuff, it ascends quite quickly with 8 large thrusters. And these are the armored thrusters, by the way. We've got some landing gears, 2 little ones and a big one to keep it off the ground. I came up with this idea that I would start rebuilding it on a wooden block, so that it would be easier to get underneath to add things like landing gears and such. And it turned into basically like a teeter-totter situation where as I was going back and forth along the ship and adding things, it was tilting on the block one way or the other. Eventually, we got it assembled enough that we could actually fly it up off the block, remove the block, and then set it back down on the landing gears. In other words, it's been an ordeal just to get this far, but we've got this far. We've got maneuvering thrusters, 4 on this side. I think 4 is a good place to start. We may add 4 more on each side though. Actually, we've got large thrusters for propulsion on the rear. I've already done some sculpting with the regular blocks, not because it's an important part of the design, but I was just basically messing around and wanted to see if I could come up with something I was happy with. This is kind of complex, it's a little bit busy, and ultimately I'm happy with it. It's just got a certain thing to it where you can see all of the thrusters, but they're recessed, and that's very important because one of the things that I came across when I was looking for information on how to maybe change the orientation of the block that we placed, the core, was that things are a little bit more hard on ships than a person might expect, and if you don't build a sturdy ship from the beginning, you may regret it. And so that's something that I've been keeping in mind as I've been progressing through this, with the exception of these 2 rows or columns, maybe depending on how you look at it. On the back, this whole thing is made out of the hardened steel blocks. We've just switched to these blocks for the outer hull, but the central hull is we armored it as well as I thought would be reasonable, and we even armored this undercarriage a little bit more so that it's covering the control block, which we placed in the same spot as the last one. Turned out on the bottom of the hull. So we're doing our best to make sure that this thing is going to be sturdy, and one of the ways that we're doing that is making sure that first of all, weapons are very, very difficult to hit directly. We've already got a couple of Gatling guns on here, and these are ones I was talking about this on our hover vehicle. We have Gatling guns that are kind of staggered one side to the other. It makes it a little bit difficult to hit targets without, you line up the crosshair, say down the middle, and you shoot, and the bullets land on either side because of the way the guns are staggered. Additionally, if you have 2 guns, you'll only ever hit with one because you're hitting with this one on this side, and this one, by its very nature, is missing. So we've set them up this way in the hopes that we'll get better use out of the guns, but then also we've set it up so that it's going to be surrounded by a number of blocks from any angle, so unless you're shooting directly straight onto the guns, you're not going to be able to hit them very easily. There's going to be some work that'll have to be done to chip away the hull to the point where you can destroy the guns. And something similar, I think I need to turn on, I need to turn on the jetpack. I did something very similar with the cockpit, because something that makes a great deal of sense. If your ship's cockpit is destroyed, you lose the ability to control the ship. I don't know if your character is instantly killed, but I do know that no cockpit is not a good situation to be in. So again, we've sculpted the hull around the cockpit, and we're going to be doing another layer of blocks, the regular steel blocks around that as well, in sort of the spaced armor sort of theme. And that way we're making a very sincere effort to protect the cockpit, protect the weapons, so that we do encounter hostile forces that can shoot back at us. They don't have an easy time of disabling us. So that's what I've been working on. And now we're going to take a look at what we can do with this guy by way of adding those regular steel blocks to make things, first of all, a little bit better protected, and also to improve the appearance of them before we unleash it on the unsuspecting world. We've got a little bit of time left in the day. We've got a little bit better lighting down on the ground in our work area, but we aren't very well suited for lighting in the upper areas when we're working on the ship. So we kind of want to get down to business here. And all we're going to do, I just have this thing with thrusters and the like, where I like to kind of protect them by having them recessed in whatever they happen to be encased in. In this case, we've got all kinds of blocks. I actually have almost fully depleted our iron deposit. We have an iron deposit just over there. It doesn't even show up on the map anymore. It's so thoroughly depleted. There's still a little bit more that we can get out of it, but it's kind of a pain to get to, because the iron deposit was the first one that I really went after on this world, and due to my inexperience, I mined too deep too fast, and now what's left is kind of up close to the surface. It's not easy to get to from the top, because as you're mining, it's basically disintegrating under you, and it's too far away to get from the bottom. You can't just stand at the bottom of the hole and look up and mine it from there. It's not going to work that way either. So I have to either find another deposit for iron ore if we need more iron, or I have to figure out a solution for that guy over there. Now this here, there's a part of me that thinks we should add more thrusters, because we've got 8 heavy thrusters on the underside that are capable of providing lift. It's nice to have something even remotely comparable on the top to slow us down if we decide that we've gone too far. I think we're just going to have to be careful and make sure that we account for the fact that we're going to be able to lift faster than we're going to be able to slow down, and we're not going to have to worry about descending so quickly that we're going to wreck our ship, because we've got so many thrusters on top. Now, the whole idea for me with the whole spaced armor kind of thing is so that the blocks on the outside take damage, but we're limiting their ability to potentially transfer damage to other blocks. I don't know how damage transfers in this game, but the way I look at it is it's not going to hurt us to put a little bit of a gap between the central armor core, I said it, and the exterior bits, so that if one block is going to potentially transfer damage to a block below it, as long as they're connected, then it won't be able to transfer directly to the hull. We'll have to force the enemy to work to get to the bits that they want to destroy. We're not just going to hand it to them. And then up here, this is where we're going to do a little bit of sculpting. Right now, we're mostly just blocking this in and getting it set up. We don't have to worry too much at this point about making sure that everything is going together with the right block. Excuse me, the right blocks to make everything look the way we want it to. We're going to be largely happy to just get it put together with the basics, so that we can take a step back and see whether or not it's going to be roughly what it is that we were thinking of when we came up with the idea. So now we will take this guy, we'll just tuck him under there, and then we'll take this guy and we'll run him across there. I think that's going to be pretty close to what we had in mind. And now we get to waste some more power for this guy. and this side. And that should be exactly what we need for this guy. Yes, it's looking good. And yes, and then this guy. There's something with the way that the developer has set up the blocks so that when you're using paired blocks like this one and this one are sort of meant to go together. I think no, it's this one and this one that go together, and this one and this one, this one and this one. When you're using those blocks, when you use one of them, when you go to place the second one, it's already lined up for you the way that you might want it to be, based on what I'm assuming is some really convenient little algorithm that helps you match things that need to be matched. See how I don't have to twist any of these guys around? They're all perfectly oriented so that they go together the way we want them. I really like that. I really appreciate that as a feature. It saves a lot of time. And in this case, this is a relatively small ship, and we're already into it several hours on account of the building and demolishing that was necessary. So everything that saves time kind of offsets those kinds of situations. So this is a spot here where I'm actually placing a lot of blocks directly in contact with the hull. And this is basically a concession in the names of appearances. And I'm happy to make that concession from time to time, especially when we're talking about the top of the ship. And I don't really expect that this ship in particular is going to be encountering a lot of things that are firing on it from the top. At least that's the plan. It's to avoid those situations, and at the very least, if we recognize that someone has got the jump on us and they're shooting at us from the top, to correct the situation as soon as possible. So this is kind of where I'm going to leave this part for now. This is another one of those things where it's very simple, it's very straightforward. It wants to knock me off the ship anyway, so we'll let it go. If we come back here and maybe back up on the steps to get a view, it's got a bit of a contour. You know, it's straight across the top and then a bit of a gentle contour down here, and we can't necessarily see that that's the top of the cockpit where it's coming across. But for the time being, at the very least, it's getting closer to what I would like. So we leave it there for a little while, and sometime in the process of wandering around doing other things, we might notice that, you know what, if we did it just a little bit different there, we would like it that much more. That's how I do a lot of my builds, is we just kind of block it in, get something in place that looks sort of like what we had in mind, and then just be open-minded as we're wandering around doing other things. The other thing that I wanted to do with this guy, and I've tried to do this a number of times in other games, building spaceships, and it hasn't worked. Not because the game didn't support it, but because I kind of didn't really care that much at the time. But this one I'm going to be a little bit more sticky about it, and that is to kind of come up with this idea of curved sort of wings that I want to come down and over the sides. And in this case, they're going to be weaponized. We're going to put weapons on them because we might as well. But the first thing that I have to do is kind of get an idea of the dimensions that I want, and then start blocking it in, get the contours that I want, and then over time, again, we'll kind of keep an eye on it, and we'll sculpt it out and finish it off a little bit later. And hitting all the wrong buttons, doing our best to spin there we go, look at that. And like that, and then watch, we grab this guy, oriented right away to do exactly what we want it to do. Makes me so happy. And then we come across here, and we do this guy, same thing, suddenly oriented exactly how we want it. Now see, here's where we get to kind of a decision process. This angle is actually a little bit more aggressive than I would like, but it's the best we can do. We can't do a more shallow angle without having it kind of staggered with flat and then the 22.5 degree angle like we have here. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I'm not going to be happy with either way, but if I keep it like this, at least it keeps like kind of a smooth profile. It doesn't look quite so pixel. It's a voxel sort of thing, which automatically lends itself to being very, very similar in a lot of cases to pixel art if we're not careful. So we're going to do the best we can with what we've got and trust that it'll be good enough. I think we're going to do one more row of those guys. And then we'll switch it up to the next shape. Eventually this whole thing is going to be clad in these blocks. And it's going to be a little bit cheaper, I think, to perform repairs, because the cheaper blocks are on the outside. And also, if we're a little bit aggressive about how we approach those kinds of conflicts and keep moving, I think we'll probably not find too many situations where we have holes chewed directly through our hull. I came across quite an angry post from a fella who had built a ship, and in the process of, building it, he put all kinds of guns on it, and he was very pleased with it, and he wanted to go and do this thing in a place. And he went to that place, and as soon as he arrived, he found that his ship wasn't using the weapons the way that he thought they would be used. And he wound up having this ship that he spent a lot of time building destroyed, basically, right in front of his eyes in the span of about 2 minutes. And on one hand, I feel very bad for anyone who invests a very significant amount of time, measured in hours, on a build, and finds out after the fact that it's basically not as good as they had hoped it would be. On the other hand, it's kind of like, what specifically aren't you telling us about what happened? That before we assume bug on everything, are we actually talking on the same page about what was being done? Did you just kind of show up and sit there and think that your auto turrets were going to take care of it for you, or were you actually, strategically navigating all these different questions that a person can ask if they're inquisitive enough? But this being the internet, it's pretty much guaranteed to cause a fight. So lately I've been trying to avoid that because it's really just not worth it. And I did not intend to take damage there. I've been doing that a lot lately. Fortunately, I don't take a lot of damage, and I found out that my med bay inside my base actually does a very good job of restoring my health. I just basically have to stand near it, and if I'm missing health, it'll start restoring it until it's full, which for me is very convenient, because like I say, I don't intend to take a lot of damage, but when I do, it's nice to be able to have it restored without having to burn up a bunch of consumables to do it. And now, this is kind of, I get a lot of flack sometimes from people who really aren't happy with me because I choose not to use the mirror building tools and such. Given the resource costs for removing things and how long it takes in this game, I'm not so sure I want to be making the mistake on both sides of this shit. I would rather do one side, get it right, fix the things that I have to fix, and then move on to the other side and duplicate it that way, I think, than necessarily have to be making energy packs from the repair and remove tool. We're just going to make sure that we're using the right guy. I think this will kind of leave us in a good place for, first of all, gauging the scale of these would-be wings, and also sort of the contours and how they're going to fit with the rest of the things once we finish building out the chassis around the sides of the hull and all that other stuff down the underneath. The underside is really where it makes sense, I think, to focus some extra attention on making sure that things are going to survive for a little while longer than they would normally if we were just building for looks. So we're going to do that for sure, but with the understanding that we're kind of limited now based on the presence of the landing gears. We can't build below the landing gears unless we want to move them, which we can do, but I don't want to. I don't want to at all. With the wooden block thing and the teeter-totter and everything that went into getting it to work in the first place, I'm not enthusiastic about having to replace the landing gears so soon. And I will be using the wooden block thing again in the future, just a slightly revised and more useful version in case you actually want to see it. The next ship that we build is probably going to be started on some wooden blocks, but this time around I just wanted to get it done and back up to the point where we had it before. And like so. I've also been focusing my efforts on the gardening a little bit more deliberately. I've expanded it again. I found that space durian is one of the vegetables that I really wanted to grow because it's used in the food that I use the most often. But it's one of the plants that I had the least of, so we're actually growing it with the intent of producing sprouts so that we can get double the seeds and then continue to grow more and more and more. And then once we've got it up to the point where we've got as much as we can use, we should be in good shape. So this is what it looks like so far. We've got these things kind of coming down the side. On the underside, they're going to have, I think they're going to be rocket launchers. That'll be my first sort of inclination, is to have wing-mounted rocket launchers that we can use on hardened structures and, you know, turrets and things like that. We have the Gatling guns here that we can use against drones and, you know, dinosaurs that we feel like punishing for no reason other than we can. And then we'll have spotlights all over the place. We're going to make sure that we've got enough thrusters. Like I say, keeping an open mind and not assuming that we've got enough now means that later on we aren't, you know, kind of cranky and disappointed if we realize that we would benefit from more. The thing is, I want to be able to ascend quickly and strafe side to side so that we can keep the fire on the target without leaving ourselves sitting there and eating shots to the face because we're not moving. So that's it. So the next episode, I'll probably have done some more sculpting and built out around the hull and things like that. Things that aren't necessarily all that thought-provoking to look at as they're being done, just to kind of give us a leg up. And then we'll take a look at some of the detailing that we do in the form of sculpting the wings and the area around the cockpit, and then any other goodies that we have. And then when it's done, we'll take it out for a test flight, and we'll see what we can do about exploring the area, maybe finding another iron deposit, and all the other things that we can learn before we have to start thinking about building a capital ship and getting off the planet. So if you want to be notified when I add the next video, you can subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.